You have to honor Mother Earth being a Native American. As far as for Navajo, that's what we do. So you have to honor everything from the sunrise to the dawn. My name is Verlina. My clans are Hanagahni, born for Todekoje Kia Ani Armanali. The Bethalajina is my Che. So I have grandkids, and that's where I have to be the pillar to make that stability and to incorporate all our traditional culture, belief, the philosophy. So we came from Mother Earth, from Father Skies, and we're the children in between. I have seen the season changing. There's less water. And I notice in the ground itself, it's like drying up, and it's creating erosion because of all the commotion on the American side. No one's honoring Mother Earth. That's where Mother Earth and Father Sky are angry. And we're in the middle, like I said, the children.
Navajo Nation in northeast Arizona, an arid region the size of West Virginia. Having held the status of indigenous reservation land since 1868, today it's home to around 200,000 people. Keith Howard is the director of the Navajo Nation government's Climate Change Awareness Program.
Yate, my name is Keith Howard. The Navajo people are a hunter-gatherer society. Tens of thousands of years ago, there was a land bridge, ice bridge that formed between the Russian and the North American border, way up there. And from that, the people were migrating with the animals during that time.
During planet Earth's last ice age, around 17,000 years ago, Native American tribes arrived on the North American continent from Asia, crossing the frozen ocean of the Bering Strait between modern-day Russia and Alaska.
That's how we came to be in existence here in the Southwest, was through those migration routes.
When that ice age ended and the ice bridge between Asia and North America melted, human society on the continent developed in isolation from the rest of the planet. That was until the age of European imperialism.
After years, we started noticing a different race of people, what we know now as the Belagana, the white people, the white man. These white people started to stake land, claiming indigenous land as their own. Our Diné people were forced to give up their lands.
After years of war between the two peoples, agreement was reached for peaceful cohabitation.
The United States government, they allowed us to come back to our natural homelands with the signing of the Treaty of 1868.
These high plains of northeast Arizona were designated tribal lands, where the Navajo had the right to self-govern. The reservation was not a region which the young United States was interested in.
The United States government said that place is a wasteland. It's an extreme environment. There's harsh conditions there. And that's how, to this day, we're still here.
But 150 years on, in this extreme environment, climate change is hitting them hard.
Well, Navajo Nation, it's very large, and it's very arid, it's very dry. A lot of the people are relying on animals and grazing of animals and so forth, and you don't see, in general, the kind of irrigated agriculture you see in some of the lower parts of the Southwest. They sometimes describe themselves as a food desert because they only have 13 supermarkets in the entire Navajo Nation. It's estimated 30 to 35% of the population does not have running water to their homes.
Brian Klimowski is a meteorologist for the National Weather Service.
The reservation lands of northeast Arizona sit in a dry part of Arizona. It is in the rain shadow of the higher mountains in central and eastern Arizona.
So, has the climate over the Navajo Nation changed in recent years?
You bet, you bet. We've seen decreases in the water table. We've seen, let's say, 1 to 3 degrees of warming over the past 50 years up over the Navajo reservation, impacting growing seasons, for instance.
For a people who have farmed these lands the same way for centuries, a changing climate is making life very difficult.
It's been changing significantly, and there's less water. And I notice in the ground itself, it's like drying up, and it's creating erosion. You see, it finally snowed until in November. Usually we would get our snow around September. So that's how we know it's changing.
For Larry Sosi, a local rancher, the weather is making life very hard.
The drought really impact on the people. For the past years, we had no rain, we didn't have no snow, but just dust storm.
Not only is there less rain, but when it does fall, it is torrential. The more extreme weather has broken many of the man-made dams the Navajo use to stop and store surface water.
This monsoon season time, the water used to come down here, and then it used to sit right here. Within 4 years, this earth dam broke. This one no longer holds water. The impact of this one is trying to get it fixed. It can be fixed and then try to get it working again, but it's just no help.
The already extreme terrain of Navajo Nation is seeing the accelerated effects of climate change.
So they're a naturally dry location. So any changes in the climate can have an amplified impact over that area because they're already quite dry.
How extreme this terrain is, it's really poor. It's really poor.
Not content to simply observe the changing climate, Verlina has been collecting samples from her produce over recent years to show the effects on her crop.
This is the corn that I grew in my little farm plot, my garden. And it shows the difference by the year due to climate change. The top one, I started planting in 2015. So as you see, the corn is bigger, the kernel is bigger. 2015, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, and 22. As you see, it's getting smaller. The reason being is because of climate change. There's less water. When it rains vigorously, and then it's just a runoff. You know how the ground's just dry and it just runs off, and when it runs off, it takes the soil with it.
The corn plant is the basis of human civilization on the American continent, and for this Navajo elder, the fact that it no longer flourishes here is a worrying sign.
Corn is used for a number of things. The corn represents the whole Navajo community, not community, but the Navajo culture, who we are as a person.
With no forecast that the climate change is slowing down, the situation on the reservation is only expected to worsen.
People are very sensitive to the weather. Simply because of the warmer temperatures, we will see greater drought impacts.
And as the climate becomes more extreme, many Navajo are leaving.
A lot of our young generations are leaving the reservation. That's the only way you'll succeed in life. That's the only way you'll become something.
Of the under 30 population raised on their ancestral lands, locals here estimate more than 80% ultimately end up settling off reservation.
Our ancestral teachings have really given us strength over time to be resilient individuals.
Michionne Gorman is the Adaptation Program Director at the Phoenix Indian Center.
And so when they come here to these major urban areas, there is several different challenges that are very unique to these communities, navigating a way of life that has been very, very different from their ways of living that they grew up with.
My name is Munti Sinqua, coming from the Hopi, Tewa, and the Choctaw Nations.
Munti is a champion Navajo dancer in his specific event, the hoop dance. He grew up on the Navajo reservation, but after leaving as a young man, he has spent his adult life in the westernized United States. He says the neighboring areas are two different realities.
Oh, it's drastically different. It's two different worlds. Down here, it's a really fast pace. Everything's moving quickly. On the reservation, it's very laid back. Everything happens real slow. When a lot of the young people did come out here to live or to go to school, I think the difficulty was being removed from your family, because out on the reservation, your family support is pretty strong, because, you know, as well as our clanship relations, and you come to the city and you're by yourself.
Many of them might be turning to things like substance abuse or having mental health challenges that are very difficult to address, especially when you are who might not understand the cultural significance of authority, of healing practices, and of what family and community really means.
There's no job here. When they get their master's degree, when they get their PhD, when they come back to the reservation, then they go to Window Rock to apply for a job, they're always being told, you're overqualified. We cannot hire you.
With the increasingly extreme climate making life on the Navajo reservation unsustainable, as people leave, this ancient tribe fears the loss of their culture.
As Indigenous people, we are very connected to the land that we come from. Our traditional teachings have really taught us to be caretakers of the land, of resources around us. And unfortunately, the impacts of colonization has led to an increase of Native folks needing to leave their ancestral homelands in order to sustain their normal ways of living.
When you do leave the reservation or leave your homeland, you do tend to change and assimilate to whatever community you're in, because you have to. It makes life easier for you. So way back when I was growing up, my grandparents and great-grandparents felt sometimes it was better when you could learn English better than you could learn your traditional tongue. And I think you do lose a lot, losing the language, losing the way of life. But that being said, there's also a resurgence in some of the communities as well, with educating the youth, not only in the language, but also in the plant life, the medicines, just everyday teachings.
The Navajo have been on these lands far longer than the European arrivals who turned the United States into the country it is today. They say, given their wisdom regarding Mother Earth and Father Sky, that they can contribute to the issue of the changing global climate.
The future of the Navajo Nation, of the Navajo Nation, will really depend on education. That's one of the main reasons why our program was to bring awareness about climate change, bring educational outreach about the scientific views of global warming, about the idea of conservation, to save what we have for our future generations, to realize that we are in a crisis state, conditions that are happening within our own homelands.